here tonight.
It certainly should, and there they are, 2 by 2. Warriors about ready to go to battle. There's no question about it. It's been a tough day here, but Jimmy Wilson, the entire NASCAR staff, and the management of Oswego Speedway did everything humanly possible to get us right now where we are for today's presentation. Matt Hirschman, no stranger to running at this racetrack. Car number 60, running to the inside. Outside, row number 1. It is another competitor that's looking to visit victory lane. He's been so close on so many times this season. That, of course, is Greg Lutz. Lutz is there in second. Patrick Emerling makes up row number 2. And, of course, Justin Bonsignore. Final checking at NASCAR control, checking to make sure that conditions are ideal. This is a 150-lap race, the Toyota Modified Classic 150. Backstage, the Super Modifieds and the fans are here in full force. They love open-wheel racing, and they love the men and women of the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. Joe, there's row number 1. And the field. You can feel the ground start to shake. That's what we're looking for.
Oh, without a doubt, and the excitement is starting to build. You know, one of the things I noticed during the hot lap session, they were switching tires back and forth. They'd run maybe 3-4 laps, come in, pull those tires, and put another set of tires on. So definitely expect 1, maybe even 2 pit stops for these NASCAR Modifieds here tonight.
Well, the strategy, the competitors were told exactly what they can or cannot do in the competition here. Tire strategy and keeping your tire program aligned and ready is what this is all about. We are watching, of course, tonight's event, the Oswego, and it looks like we are just a few moments away from the start. Tonight's grand finale. From the starter stand, the indication, yellow flag is up in air one more time around. Big money Matt Hirschman in upstate New York and in Pennsylvania and wherever you go. He's the star of the Monaco Tri-Track Series as a multiple champion in all of that as well. But we're ready. And of course, in just a few moments, we'll get him fired back up. There's no odds-on favorite, Joe, in this one. We've got already winners. I talked about them for a few short moments, but we got other competitors that are very hungry, that want to get into victory lane, the prestige and the honor of this, the oldest division in NASCAR.
Well, I'm going to tell you, keep an eye on those Catalanos. They're back there about halfway back through the field, and they like to lead, they like to win. And that young guy, boy, keep your eyes on him as well. So,
next time we should be ready to fire them up. Pace truck at the front of the field. Spotters high atop the backstretch here. Hard to believe at this racetrack, today is asphalt. After the conclusion of this, the Classic weekend, it'll be turned over to Joe's favorite. And what's that, Joe?
I guess it's dirt.
And that is going to be the story. Asphalt racing about to be unleashed. Ladies and gentlemen, up on the edge of your seats in anticipation. Here they come, rumbling off turn number 4. And here are the stars of the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour as we go green here at Oswego.
And the hammers are down, coming down into turn number 1. Everybody shuffling around and looking for racing space, coming off that number 2 corner and down the back straightaway. A good start as they really scream down that back straightaway down into turn number 3. Coming out of turn number 4 now to complete lap number 1.
Take a look at what's happening here. Car number 3. That is the Boulder Racing Enterprises car. Bobby Santos III came out, had a very limited amount of practice. Santos is still working his magic, trying to get to the front of the field. Meanwhile, the competition is still starting to get strung out. They work their magic off the turn, back up front. Inside lane looked racy for a while. Silk is on the move, but he is still not there to contend.
Well, Hirschman in the number 60 car. He has got that number 1 spot with the 46 running right there in the number 2 position. So they go at it coming off of turn number 2 and going down the back straightaway. The third place is the number 1 of Patrick Emmerling, and he is trying to close in. He'd like to get up to that number 1 spot real early here in this event as they bring it down in the front straightaway.
Currently, as we look at the battle, Patrick Emmerling, car number 1. He stepped out of line. He's running in the 3rd position. Meanwhile, it is still Lutz who's setting in position number 2. Lutz is a big factor as he works his magic further up in the field. Meanwhile, keep your eyes on the car that is setting back there in the 4th position. That is the number 51 machine of Justin Bonsignor. Bonsignor starts to work over Patrick Emmerling. Directly behind him is Austin Beers. Nobody is stepping out of line already, but suddenly Emmerling is feeling the heat of car 51.
And Beers in that number 5 spot, holding on to that and trying to move in on Bonsignor for the number 4 position as they run down in between turns number 3 and 4. Coming off of turn 4 and down the front straightaway, Beers hangs right in that number 5 spot, and he is challenging. They're all right together. It's still anybody's race. No clear leader. Hirschman, though, up in the number 1 spot, and Hirschman leads him down in between turns number 3 and 4.
Well, the battle still rages between second on back. It is Lutz with car number 46, trying to keep a nice tight line to the bottom through the turns. Emmerling is there, runs in the tire tracks, then directly behind him, it is Bonsignor. We're looking further back in the field. Bottom of the top 10, Woody Pitcat, car number 82, has just won around the Catalano number 54 car. That's a battle, as we said, just out of the top 10 currently as we speak.
Beers still running back there in that number 5 spot aboard car number 64. He's trying to close in on the number 51 of Bonsignor, who is running in the number 4 spot. Bonsignor seems to be drifting up the racetrack when he comes out of turn number 2, and doing that just now as he goes down the back straightaway.
Jacob Lutz, car number 14. We had a good shot of him working his magic to get to the front of the field in this event. Right now, we're looking at Tyler Ripkema, car number 32. There are literally 6 cars behind him. Catalano is there with the 56, then the second Catalano car. But right now they're trying to move in on the inside of Tyler Ripkema. Ripkema still sitting in that position as they come off the turn and head down into turn number 1. Still tight racing. The Catalano brothers are at it once again. And Jankowiak is right there in that neon green and white machine.
Yes, he is. But I've been watching the front row with Hirschman up there in the number 1 spot. Lutz riding right there in the number 2 spot. And Lutz trying to reel him in as they go down that back straightaway. Lutz now high in the number 2 spot, trying to close in on Hirschman. But Hirschman seems to have everything going his way right now as he comes down and completes.
Well, it's not the story, Joe, for the lead right now. It's the story for 3rd position. In the 3rd position currently is Patrick Emmerling. Justin Bonsignor, the leader by 4 points in the point standings, setting back in the 4th spot. But he is being heavily worked over by the number 64 car of that young and talented Austin Beers. Beers setting back, waiting for the opportunity. Behind them is car number 22 for Kyle Bonsignor, and Ronnie Silk, believe it or not, has settled into the 7th position with Santos back in 8th and Woody Pitcat rounding out the 9th spot with Tommy Catalano in 10th.
You know, I've been watching that number 7 spot. You're exactly right. He has been really closing in that position and trying to go to the outside. Now, everybody is staying down low, coming off the corners and down the straightaways, whether it be the front or the back straightaway, particularly in the back straightaway. But a couple of cars now are drifting up a little bit higher and trying to come down on going down into turn number 3 to try to pick up a spot. Right now, it is single file. 132 laps to go.
Well, there's no question as things are starting to settle in. It still appears that there is a pack of cars. You just looked at Silk. Silk looks to the inside. He's directly running in position number 7. Kyle Bonsignor directly in front of him. Bonsignor drifts up one lane. Now, moving to the bottom of the racetrack, Patrick Emmerling putting the pressure on Craig Lutz. Lutz in the 46 car. Emmerling is there. Can't do it. Look a little further back. All of a sudden, here comes Ron Silk. Silk moves in, takes over position number 6. He is starting to make his presence known.
I'm watching that battle with Emmerling, who is running back in the number 3 spot. He tries to get up high, always tries to get a run coming off of turn number 2. Just cannot complete it, but he is going to be a factor when we get about halfway through. Right now, Hirschman, though, way up there on the top side with Lutz in the number 2 position.
Meanwhile, good battle still going on as car number 16, Ron Silk, has moved into that 7th position. The strategy of the Silk team, Phil Moran said, we just want to pace ourselves in the early laps of competition. We're not sure on tire management or where on the tires itself. So we want to make sure we save enough for the end of the race. Meanwhile, it is Austin Beers who is really applying a ton of pressure to Justin Bonsignor. Bonsignor continues to work his magic. Patrick Emmerling now to the inside. He had a shot at it for a minute, thought twice of it, and pulls back in the line. One move, whether it's low or high, and you step on a line, and 3 or 4 cars are going to pick up the positions.
Back there in the number 4 spot, Bonsignor aboard car number 51, holding on that spot. But Austin Beers right behind in car number 65, and he is trying to come up onto the outside as he comes through the corners. Right behind him, it's Ronnie Silk, and Ronnie stays right in the fast lane, coming off the corner. Bonsignor running back there 7th. Santos in the number 3 running back there 8th. 9th is Woody Patak, and Tommy Catalano rounding out the top 10.
There's good racing still in that battle between Austin Beers with that number 64 car. That is the car that Sly Zabin, who used to be the crew chief on the championship Flamingo team, years back when drivers like Ryan Preece was dominant at championships on the Whelen Modified Tour. He's teamed up with Ron Newhouse, a former driver for the Irish Angel. Trouble now. We've got a ton of smoke down into turn number 1, hitting at a ton, and it appears that there is the engine lets go or something, and it is one of the Catalano cars.
54.
And very, very tough situation. Tommy Catalano in the Catalano Motorsports machine. You can see the line of fluid going down into turn number 1. And that's the safer barrier that we were talking about, the foam. And obviously something, Joe, let go on that race car because it had no place to go. Once it got on the fluid, the wheels on the fluid, it spun around and went in to the left rear of the number 54 machine.
We're going to get a replay on this. Yes.
Running for position down the front straightaway. Smoke erupts from the left bank.
The left side.
It becomes intense. He does a great job of trying to hold the car, and he ends up doing a 360 spin and backs in to the safer barrier and a tough break, and you can see that line of fluid. Look to the very right of your screen, and you will see that the Jankowiak car tried to avoid the entire situation, and Angie Jankowiak, an outstanding driver, a real talent in everything and any car he competes in. And he is like the old school. We talked about Richie Evans in the glory days. There's Tim Conley's race car. Ken Heggie, over 100 career starts. What a record all by itself. And there he is, out of the race car after such a wild ride. The Catalano family, this is an amazing story when you have an entire family racing, and not just on asphalt, but on dirt. And the side story in all of this, Joe, is every one of the Catalanos, including Mom, they all have tremendous amount of talent, and they are here every race, and they are showing their talent and their skills. This team will be back and stronger than ever. There's no question there.
The young ones seem to be getting stronger and stronger, too.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
So there you're looking at the entire field, which is now stopped under a red flag situation that is created and, of course, that is caused by the situation that we have said. We talked earlier a little bit about who's been hot and who's been a big factor this season. There's one individual with 3 wins on the Whelen Modified Tour this year, and that is Ronnie Silk in the Phil Moran prepared race car. Justin Bonsignore has 2. Jake Johnson secured his first. That came at the high banks of Monadnock. And then Hirschman would win at Seekonk, as we said. Then Austin Beers at Lancaster, and Patrick Emmerling securing a victory, of course, competing at Thompson Speedway, with Trevor Catalano taking down a victory as well at the high banks. Now, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of the action on the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour right after this.
And we're back live, and of course we're red flagged right now as the Catalano car up on the hook going into the pit area. Track safety crew doing a tenacious job as always, and you can see where they started to lay the speedy dry down, right down underneath here in the front straightaway and all the way up into turn number 1. Well, once again, the caution is out, and the reason for the caution, obviously, for a blown engine and a car going in the wall, and that was the Catalano car going up into turn number 1. They're laying the speedy dry down right down in front, here in the front straightaway, all the way up into turn number 1. So a lot of oil came out of that car, and he got into the wall sideways, doing some pretty heavy damage.
You know, we just had a perfect shot of the extensive damage that was done, and that young driver had nowhere to go or nothing to do, because whatever dropped, whether it was an oil line or something in the engine itself, and when you see this much speedy dry, it usually, sadly, is the worst case of them all, and the engine has expired. He was out of the car. He is okay, thank goodness for that. And you saw them bring the car back down to pit road with extensive damage done on that as well. You know, Moneybags, Matt Hirschman is the leader of the event so far. And Hirschman has run here before, and he has had success here. But I think what makes it very interesting, Joe, is the fact that his dad also had success at this racetrack. So they say that Matt Hirschman's key ingredient is a notebook that he has with all that information on every racetrack he goes, where he goes, what the setup is, and what the adjustments he made. His father did the same thing. So can you imagine putting 2 generations of work, knowledge, and information into one race team? And that's what you're looking at as you look at car number 60. The car that's in second, the 46 car, very interesting story. This team broke up a couple seasons back, and then they decided to get back together. When they did, they are very consistent and very strong. They run up front. It is said by other teams that they perhaps, well, they're the rabbit chased by the dog. They're just too quick early in the race, and they don't know how to close the deal. That might be the case, but today looks like completely different strategy, because what Lutz has done is he has run with Hirschman but has not shown any real aggression. And let's go down to Jesse Punch with the driver that was involved in that altercation. Jesse?
And Tyler Catalano, early into the day there, after you made your way into the foam coming around turn one, what happened from your perspective?
I came down the front straightaway, and I don't know, I looked for the corner, and oil went all over the place, and I had no control at that point, so I just tried to back it in the fence rather than stuff it in the fence.
So nothing you could have done differently there?
Nothing really to do other than pray.
And you're okay after that hitting the wall?
Absolutely. Perfectly fine.
Awesome. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely.
Jesse Punch with the gentleman, first class. We told you about the entire Catalano family. Look at the back of that race car. You can see some of the foam that did its job, And as you look at it, what's interesting, a lot of sheet metal is extensively damaged. But if you know anything about rub rails and modifieds, now look up front. There's where they're looking to see exactly if a line came off the car, or maybe something worse, a hole in the pan, or any of the above. But right now you can see that all of that damage, and as we said before, the crew taking a look up front, and where it all began is underneath the hood of that race car. It might be something as simple as a line dropping all the fuel. These are dry sump engines, and of course they carry a lot of oil, and once that oil is out on the racetrack, well, there's no more second guessing it, and that's what you're looking at exactly as we speak right now. Let's go back and take a look at who's moving up or who's staying in line. Patrick Emmerling is in third when we went to caution, and Justin Bonsignor, he's tested the waters on Emmerling several times. He's tried low and then moved to the outside, but has not been able to get the job done. Then Austin Beers, he's a youngster with a ton of talent, having a tremendous amount of success. Kyle Bonsignor has been working him over. Ronnie Silk is there in 7th. Bobby Santos is in 8th. Woody Pitcat is up to 9th. And Tommy Catalano with the 54 car was running in the 10th position. And there's JJ, the gentleman who's involved. Each one of their race cars on the Catalano team has different crew chiefs and different people that are involved, and checking, asking questions about the engine, and what happened or what didn't happen is the answer. And whenever you're dealing with mechanical devices, you know the story, Joe. Anything can happen, and usually does.
And does, yeah. I've been checking the times of the top 10 drivers. And, of course, Matt Hirschman, on his last lap, he went in 18:079. Craig Lutz went in 18:110. But your third place running car, he went in 18:062. That's Patrick Emmerling. And he has been consistently the fastest car out on the Speedway. So we're going to see some action up there with the top 3. Fourth place, Justin Bonsignor. He, on his last lap, he went in 18:108. Austin Beers went in 18:097. So they're all right together. I mean, they're turning almost identical times. One may be a little bit quicker than the other. So obviously there's going to be a showdown.
There certainly is going to be a showdown. You can see already how things are starting to settle in. We'll take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more great racing action from Oswego Speedway for the running of the Classic and the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. We're back from the Oswego Speedway as the field of cars are staged. Cleanup still continues as the Titan is there to clean up the excessive amount of speedy dry that was needed, better known as oil dry, on the racetrack itself. In just a moment, Jimmy Wilson and the race director for the competition will tell them to fire the engines up. And we're possibly going to see some pit strategy, even though we are with 137 laps to go in this event of 150 circuits, brought to you by the Toyota organization for the presentation of the Toyota Modified Classic for 150 laps. We haven't even touched the surface or even scratched the surface in this event, as we are still under a delay as cleanup still continues, as in a few short moments we should be ready to fire them back up. You know, this, Joe, is a grand facility with so much history, and the history began when this racetrack, you're a veteran announcer and you know a lot of the history that happened here, but it wasn't always a 5/8 mile racetrack, now was it?
No, you can see the inside track over there, what we call the short track, and it was a little bit shorter track to begin with, and then obviously it was extended out until the full 5/8 mile that it exists today.
You know, a lot of our listeners and viewers on Flo might not be familiar with the Oswego Speedway, but one of the things that's the most amazing factor of all is the transition when they turn this racetrack after the traditional classic weekend and they turn it over from asphalt to dirt. And Joe, you're here for that action as well. Tell us what happens and what's in store when they're able to do that.
Well, before the sun went down, just off at turn number 2, you could see a great big huge pile of dirt or clay, and as of next week you'll see them come in and they'll be laying down probably 2 to 3 foot of dirt all the way around this racetrack. I saw the very first one when they transitioned it over from asphalt to dirt, and same speedway, but whole different racetrack.
It certainly is. It's amazing. Over the years, I had the opportunity to come to this racetrack. The Caruso family were always very gracious to me and to others, and it looks like we're starting to move the field now. Safety vehicle picks up the field, and it looks like the yellow flag is waving from the starter stand. Those of you watching on Flo might not be familiar, but the starter is on the inside of the racetrack, and you're looking at the starter's stand with the yellow flag there. Most racetracks, as we're all familiar with, the starter stand is to the outside. That is not the case here. And Joe, what's the reason for all of that?
That's the way it was designed. The flagger stand was designed on the inside. It's been that right from day number 1. And when you're a regular racer here or a regular race fan here, you just get used to it being on the inside.
You know, as we came into the facility here today, we talked about it very, very briefly, but this is a beautiful area of the country, and of course it is near the Great Lakes.
Lake Ontario, behind us.
Right behind us. You can actually see it from Broadcast Central here during the daylight hours. And while most people were having a good time with their boats and enjoying Labor Day weekend, well, we're doing what we love best, racing. Joe and I, and we're racing. Incidentally, Joe Koss is away on assignment. He'll be back, and of course, at our next stop on the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. And of course, we are now winding down the bigger speedways. We'll go to the short tracks, and there's a look at that beautiful water's edge and the calmness. And there's the boats. Most people are out on their boats enjoying it. Not me and Joe. We're here, and we are glad to be here with a lot of race fans that came out exclusively for this event. And there's the field, 2,600-pound rocket sleds, and already we've got a car heading down on pit road, and we're not sure what's the story for the 64 machine.
And quite a few others coming in right behind.
So Austin Beer's coming in. We're keeping our eyes on it. It looks like a right rear going on the number 64 car. And other cars in include Conley with the number 4 machine. Jesse Punch is down there where the action is on pit road. Jesse, what's it look like from where you are?
Well, right now they are just coming in, changing tires. Most of them are just changing the right rear, and I didn't see any of them adding fuel.
Okay, heading back out is the number 64 machine. Right rear tire is the story. Tire placement and tire wear is key. When you take a look, and you can perhaps see it from your living rooms at home, this is a very coarse asphalt, and there are a lot of parts of this asphalt where it has been actually paved and repaired. It's not a bad thing. It's the way that it's done for a track of this age.
Okay, the signal going from the starter with one more lap to go. The FX Capra pace truck bring them down into turn number 1. They double up going off at turn number 2. And I believe we're going to be getting a start next time around. Green lights are showing. So the pace truck will be dropping down onto the inside out of harm's way when they come down off at turn number 4, I believe.
Looks like we're resetting the field. When we're at some racetracks, we say re-rack the field, because that's exactly what we're doing. 2x2 and side by side. There's no choose cone in the Whelen Modified Tour. You earn every position, every lap, double file restart. We are up to speed. Again, Hirschman to the advantage to the inside, but sneaking in to the number 2 position. No surprises here, Patrick Emmerling. Emmerling moves into second, car number 1, and here comes the battle of the points in 2024. It is Justin Bonsignor, hunted down by the number 16 machine, and that, of course, is Ronnie Silk.
Hirschman, the leader, going down into turn number 3, and we got another yellow out on the speedway. It's the number 18.
So the Heggie machine got a little bit crossed up and went around down in turn number 1. This will bring out caution number 2 in the event. Let's see if we're going to have any takers of individuals scheduled to come in. You look at timing and scoring, and it shows Matt Hirschman is the leader. Will it go back to the last completed scored lap, or was the entire field by? If that was the case, then Craig Lutz would go back into the number 2 position. Car number 60, of course, is still the leader, but the real story in this one is Patrick Emmerling, because he was the guy that gained big and moved into second, and you can see timing and scoring is putting Patrick Emmerling back into that number 2 spot. There is the fleet machine. Dale, the crew chief, on that race car. Patrick Emmerling said, you know, we were so consistent. We were top 3 everywhere we went, but we always came a little bit shy. And it was always strange and unusual things. Some happened on pit road that gave us the, well, not the victory that we were hoping for. That all changed at Thompson Speedway when car number 1 not only was the number 1 car, but it was the fastest car and led every circuit in the competition there as well.
Well, apparently the track safety crew feels that there is still a little bit of oil down on the speedway. It's still slick going down into turn number 1. So a caution and coming back out, and the crew going back to work from right underneath here at our tower and going all the way into turn number 1.
Well, the safety services crew, from the Oswego Speedway and the Toyota truck, everybody gets back in position, and they'll be moving along. They had checked the racing surface, and it does not appear that the situation is, well, any different perhaps than it was. The NASCAR safety services truck, which is the red Ford that you're looking at, they're coming out to check the racing surface themselves. They feel that everything is okay, and race control is talking with them at this particular time. So Ken Heggie's machine that brought out the caution number 2, spinning down in turn number 1. And turn number 1 has been the toughest spot of this racetrack, Joe, for the early laps in the competition here.
Well, that oil got laid down in there, and of course that just makes it slick.
So heading back down on pit road.
Oh, yeah.
We've got 3 cars coming in. Now, we believe these are not. We've got Tim Conley, who's already been in and out. Ken Heggie, who was the car that brought out the caution. And then we've got a 3rd car further down on pit road. So nobody up front is pitting or taking advantage of things here.
Right front tire being changed.
And then Conley's car is returning.
That's the 4 car.
And then the number 56 Catalano car for Trevor Catalano is heading back out, making a minor chassis adjustment as well. Still little preparation being made to the racing surface itself. And of course, the racing action, once it's completed here, goes on to one of the finest quarter miles in the country, the Riverhead Raceway. That'll be backed up with the event that'll be held, the 3rd stop that'll take place, and that of course is taking place at the high banks of Monadnock. We certainly hope that you'll be heading there for the JDV production event, the final event for that organization for the Whelen Modified Tour of 3. Then North Wilkesboro, Thompson Speedway again, and the crowning of the champions from the Martinsville Speedway. And what a season it has been. You're looking at the date, September 14th for Riverhead, the 21st, Monadnock Speedway, October 5th, North Wilkesboro, and then back to Thompson's Motorsports Park for the October World Series of great racing action. Chris Machad and Tom Mayberry putting together a spectacular event once again. And then it all comes to a head at Martinsville Speedway, which was a traditional favorite for a long, long time of modified drivers, owners, and race fans.
The blower coming down and blowing off some of the speedy dry or the dust going down there into turn number 1.
That's our Titan that is out there to make sure the racing surface is ideally suited. And apparently some of the crew chiefs and the spotters had a concern, and while we had this caution, the best way to take care of that concern was to check the situation and make every effort possible that conditions were ideal. Very unique racetrack because no 2 turns on this racetrack is exactly the same, is it, Joe?
No, it's not. It's a little bit different. Going down in turn number 1, a little shallow going into the number 1 corner. Turn number 2, it's pretty wide coming off that corner because they can really get a run coming off that turn. And I always call it the tricky number 3 turn. Going down into turn number 3, they can use probably 2, maybe almost 3 lanes going into that number 3 turn. Then I call it the short shoot between turns number 3 and 4, where they pretty much straighten out the car and then cut in for the number 4 turn.
You know, when we were looking at time trials today, there was literally no car in the top 5 that ran the exact same line around this racetrack. Everyone was trying to find the quickest way possible, and that was not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination.
And by weather, it changes. You know, when you're super hot and the track is really sticky, going right down into turn number 3, right in that middle lane seems to be the quick way around, and then they let it drift up a little bit going into turn number 4. Each driver, each car has its own different pattern going into those corners, and that's what makes the Oswego Speedway so unique.
It certainly does, and as we said before, they did not have the normal amount of time today. This was an impound race, so they didn't have the amount of time due to weather conditions. So it was perhaps the quickest turnaround that we have had this season for a NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour event. So 2x2 and side by side, they're ready. You're looking at row number 1. Joe, you've seen a lot of races at this racetrack. At most tracks, the preferred lane is the outside lane. Is that the story here?
It depends. Here again, it depends on the car. It depends on the track condition. Weather condition has a lot to do with it. If it's super hot and they're sticking, they go to the outside. Green light's coming on now. We're getting a good restart coming down into turn number 1.
Well, Patrick Emerly tested the water. It didn't work. All of a sudden, we just saw the number 16 car doing what we call a little bit of a stutter step. Gathered it back, held on. Side-by-side racing, there's Old Blue. To the left of your screen, car number 3. Working into the 8th position, and that, of course, is the Whelen race car. Now on a move to the inside is Woody Pitcat. Pitcat leans on the number 3 car, but Santos is able to get away. Santos still setting in position number 8.
And Hirschman there in the number 1 spot. He is now trying to pull away from the rest of the pack going down the back straightaway down to turn number 3. He goes into turn number 4 a little bit higher coming off that corner, gets a good bite, and he opens up a little bit better lead coming down the front straightaway.
You know, a car that we have to keep our eyes on is a car that is one of the cars that pitted and they changed the right rear. You're looking at it to the left of your screen. That is the 64 of Austin Beers. Beers is now coming back up through traffic. He has worked his way into the top 10. And right there with it, Jacob Lutz. Remember the race in Lancaster? Car number 14? Well, it showed a lot of, well, the worst of the wear and battle scars. But when the end of the race came out, this young driver was right there and contending. Keep your eyes on that. Lutz is continuing to apply the pressure. That's Craig Lutz with that number 46 car. Woody Pitcat's got a pretty good run going in Danny Watts' race car as he's right there behind, believe it or not, that's his brother-in-law, Bobby Santos III. Santos back behind the wheel, as we said. He's driven just about everything, anything with open wheels. He is truly one of the great open wheel drivers in the Northeast region. Trouble now, stepping out of the line, little bit of an upset. Austin Beers trying to pick up yet another position, and he will work his way into the top 8, Joe. He's moving forward step by step, inch by inch.
You know what I'm watching is second, third, and fourth. Bonsignor back there in the number 4 spot. He wants to go racing. He is moving to the outside when he comes off the corners, and he tries to get a run coming down that back straightaway, trying to pick up a position or 2. Hirschman right now has got everything going his way in the 60 car. He is the leader. He is strong up there on the front side, and he just wants to run away as we have now completed lap number, we've got 100 to go. So we've completed 50 of them.
Right now we're looking at Silk. Remember, he's 4 points behind the 51 machine. Previous, Ron Silk was leading. He's the defending race winner at this racetrack. Phil Moran knows how to create magic, and so doesn't the crew chief, of course, for car number 51. And that, of course, is another familiar name in the competition. And that, of course, continues to be the Stone machine, the man that creates more than stone when it comes to the running of the Phoenix number 51 car, as he's continuing to work over. Here comes Silk. Tries to make the move. Can't do it.
I'm just watching Silk right now, trying to come down onto the inside, trying to go from that 5th spot to the 4th spot. Right now can't do it, but boy, that is a good race going on back there for the 4th and 5th position.
Good racing wherever you look in this one. Meanwhile, Silk continues. He knows the importance. That time, Bonsignor's car got a little bit loose right in the apex and center of the turn. Watch it this time. Pretty good. Not the same. Silk looks at the outside, thinks twice of it. 3 cars now have moved in. Then it is Kyle Bonsignor directly behind them. The 22 machine is a big factor here as well. So this is the battle for the 4th, 5th, and 6th position. Silk is applying the heat, and now here's the white 64, Austin Beers. moving to the inside of Bobby Santos. Beers has moved in to position number 7. Remember, he was among the first cars to pit.
I am watching that battle for second and third right now with Emerling and Lutz. Lutz goes to the outside on a couple of occasions, tries to get right up on the outside. Can't do it, has to pull back in the line, and then nearly loses that position. But he is a hard charger right now. Silk back there in the number 5 spot aboard car number 16. He is right there becoming a factor as well, going both inside and outside lanes.
Ron Silk pulled off a classic Silk move. He worked over Bonsignore lap after lap. These are two of the best modified drivers in the country. Nobody would question their credentials. Silk realizes he's got to get to the front of this class. Every position represents points. Only 4 points separate first from second. Bonsignore has that 4-point advantage in the point parade. Once Silk got around, and here comes Austin Beers. Austin Beers working over Kyle Bonsignore. Inside lane. Beers has got a car running on rails to the bottom and one of the only cars.
And we got yellow out on the Speedway again.
Third caution of the event, just as things were getting real heated. And we're looking at another one of the Catalano cars that perhaps was the culprit. As car number 56 looks to be heading down on pit road, possibly once they open up pit road. But to reset the field, the man that has led the majority of the laps, no lead changes whatsoever, it is Matt Hirschman. Patrick Emmerling moved around Craig Lutz to move in to take over second. Lutz was in third. Ron Silk up to 4. Justin Bonsignore back to 5. Austin Beers has come from the back of the field. He has been so strong, he pitted way back on lap number 31 and quickly moved back to the front of the field. Now, Kyle Bonsignore is still in 7th. Santos is 8th. Jacob Lutz is 9th. And Woody Pitcat rounds out our top 10 positions here. Single file still until they tell the field to double up.
And right now, I think you're going to see some pit stops. Are the leaders going to be coming in?
It sure looks it.
It sure does.
Here they come. Looks like perhaps the majority of the field is coming in. We'll keep our eyes on it. Jesse Punch is down there where the action is. We're looking at the number 60 of Matt Hirschman. Hirschman's car stops.
Yep. Yeah, you guys see the 60 of Matt Hirschman, who, as you mentioned, has dominated this race so far. That team taking tires. What's interesting about these pit stops is, as you mentioned, the leaders coming in now, they're at least on a 2-tire strategy. Some of these guys might try to do it in 3, but it's a bit of a guessing game with how the cautions fall. This one fell in a good spot for these teams, as you see the leaders make their way off of pit road, but we will expect to see them come down one more time this race.
You know, there's an old saying, Jesse, and it goes like this. You can gain more positions on pit road sometimes than you can on the racetrack. And if that is true, the guy that was able to come out quick was Ron Silk with car number 16. And of course, it was a 2-tire, as Jesse pointed out, and they changed both the rear tires on the number 60 car. Now, the Silk team, they did the same strategy, but they only went with 1 rear tire, and then, of course, they made a chassis and wedge adjustment. Amazing. Car number 16 is directly behind the number 1 car of Patrick Emmerling, and then directly behind Silk is, of course,